John Noble, you came back to East Germany, to Dresden, after many years away. You came and took a factory here that was run under East German standards. What did you discover? What did you think when you came in?
Well, first of all, I knew the plant from before the war, and when my dad had originally started it, and we had about 600 people working in these halls. But when I came here, it had been completely changed. Production moved out, research put in here, research for cameras as well as for Soviet military purposes. And the people that we had here basically were overqualified, but these are the things that I had to work with. I tried to get the factory back. It took almost 2 years of battle with the Troy Hunt. I got the buildings back. Some of the other things we're still fighting over. So, say due to bureaucracy, we haven't gotten everything we wanted, but in spite of bureaucracy, we've been able to develop a whole new line of cameras and be accepted on the world market, with 1/3 going to the Orient, 1/3 being sold in the US, and 1/3 of our production being sold in Europe.
Now, before you took over, before the Troy Hunt came in and did the beginning cleanup, there were many more workers. Yes, I think you told me.
Oh, yes, there were 5,200 in the camera department. Producing the Praktika cameras at the time, the camera that was designed still while my dad owned the plant. And the Praktika people, they produced the cameras at 1,400 marks apiece and sold them for 400 marks apiece. So they lost 1,000 marks in every camera. And producing 1,000 a day meant that they were losing 1,000,000 marks a day. But they didn't care because it kept channels open for espionage and channels open for foreign currency, and this was worth it to them.
Now, you must have looked at the number of workers and fainted.
Well, no, not exactly, because after all, when you try to compete with the Japanese with mass marketing such as they're doing over there, you know that it's going to cost an unbelievable fortune even to get tooled up for something like that. So when we could not continue the camera production of the Praktika, we knew we had to start from scratch. And starting from scratch, you work with a small team. The highest qualified people we had, or we could have at the time, and they were readily available. And within 8 months' time, we brought a whole new camera out and a whole new trademark concept, a whole new name, so to speak, and it worked. It worked well.
The name of the camera?
Well, the name of the camera, because we couldn't use Praktika anymore, it was called the Noblex, taken from my name. The projector is Noblux, from the lux, the light. Well, right now the camera is primarily for professional use. The new one that's coming out for amateur use will also be called Noblex. So we're staying with that name right now. When we have the trademarks back, the Praktika trademarks, we'll be using it, but not on the panorama cameras.
There were 5,200 workers in the old plant. How many did you end up with when you got it the way you wanted?
Well, the 5,200 were scattered over a number of areas because 6 camera companies were melted together. Only the Praktika production was continued. So when that was stopped, the Troy Hunt already had fired about 4,000 of them and continued the production at least for another 6 months, something like that, and which meant really they had 4,000 unemployed to begin with. But when I took over, we started with...
But they were working. They were workers. They didn't know they were unemployed.
That's correct. They didn't know that. In other words, well, it's a total picture you have to see. The stores ran out of merchandise around noon, so people said, well, we have to buy our groceries, we have to go to the dentist during working hours, and you can't have an assembly line with that kind of a condition existing. Now, of course, the stores are full. People can buy anything anytime they want to, so that's not necessary anymore. As far as our people are concerned, all of them are, with very, very few exceptions, have degrees in electronics or master's degrees in related fields, optical divisions, and so on. And these people have been doing a fabulous job of rebuilding.
Just so people better understand what the situation was before unification, explain to me a little more fully. There were 5,200 workers. I think you said that there were several hundred just to water the plants. Tell me a few stories about
Well,
that.
out of 5,200 workers that were in the camera department, 300 alone were being used for watering plants and reading poetry. The elevator, even when I came into this building, the elevator, that freight elevator that we use going up and down, there were 8 people assigned to manage that elevator. Nonsense, but
And now?
now nobody. Everyone that uses it.
And just so you can say it in one sentence, there were 5,200 workers. The fact that there ended up being so few able to do the same work, what did that tell you?
Well, that tells me, of course, that with the people had the skills, but they didn't have the tools to do the things that they were able to do with. They didn't have the computers, they didn't have the copy machines and things like that. They hardly had telephones, they hardly had typewriters and things like that. But now with these tools being readily available, they can tackle a project and make it work so easily.
So tell me, coming into Dresden, have you been able to find the quality workers, and do you think you'll be able to grow in this area, this old East Germany?
Well, I think you have to look at it this way. East Germany is an area by itself. Saxony, one of the states, is probably the most advanced state of East Germany. In Saxony, you have basically the 2 major cities, Leipzig and Dresden, that sort of are competing with each other. Dresden, the high-tech center, Leipzig, the trading, merchandising center. But basically, when you ask, can we continue? Oh, yes, we can. The skills are there. Now, unfortunately, if this goes on for years and years and years of massive unemployment here, those people that have these high skills they'll have withered away. And we find it too, even in our plant. If you look around, you'll see that most of the people are a little bit up in years. So we know we have to bring a young crop in here to let them have the opportunity of growing with the business.
I mean, some people have said that 60 years, 40 years of communism, that, a whole generation, 2 generations have come up not knowing how to work.
Well, that I would have to say, out of experience, I'd have to disagree with that. Now, it is true that even the plants today that are still being run by the Treuhand, the people won't work there because they don't know if they've got a job tomorrow or next month or next year. So there's no enthusiasm there. In my plant here and in most every privately owned plant, it's quite different. People see the opportunity, they want to have a job, they want to hang on to their job. I would say that my people are producing 100%, 120%. So you can't say they're not working.
And what is it that makes it work here? Why are they able to do that?
There are several things. I think one is the privatization. In other words, they want to get away from government control, government operation, and so on. That's one thing. The second thing, maybe not too many people will understand, but because of 40 years of socialism, the people don't want to see someone skim all the cream off the top. So when the difference between the lowest paid worker and the highest paid worker is enormous, then they won't work either. In West Germany, as you probably know, the difference between the lowest and the highest is roughly 100 times. In the US, roughly 200 times. In East Germany, you cannot go over 10 times as a maximum. Otherwise, the people will not work. Because they feel here's someone coming in, a capitalist coming in from the West, and again, hogging all the wealth. But when they see that you're willing to work with them, that you stay within reason, they'll do everything possible.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, in this one socialist country, there is still a social consciousness about disparity of wages. And
oh yes, I think that that's true. I was asked, now maybe this doesn't sound nice to put it on television, but I was asked when I spoke at the consulate a week ago, I suppose. The question came up, well, what about labor unions? And I told them, and that was sort of shocking for most of them there, I said, when I took over, I said, we're not going to have unions in this plant. Now, the simple reason, I know every worker, I know their families, I've been in their homes, I know their conditions, they know me, They've been in my home. We don't need a spokesman for them. The relationship is there. You can only do that, of course, with a plant up to maybe 400 or 500 people. Beyond that, you can't do that anymore. But as long as you stay within that framework, I think the people here, they have the confidence if there's any problem within the family, they can come to me. We've got an insurance program for each and every one of the workers. We have incentive programs for the normal employees. We have profit sharing for all the leaders in the plant. It works.
And for people who are thinking about coming in from, like you did, from the United States, what would you tell them to be, what would you tell them to be worried about, and what would you tell them to be confident about?
Well, first of all, ownership problems are still problems over here. So you do have to bring a lawyer along to make sure that you know what you've got is really yours. But beyond that, what you really have to worry about is treating the people the way you'd want to be treated yourself. I know that sounds oversimplified, but the people have been told for 40 years, this is yours, it's all yours, it's people's own business, people's own country, and yet the people didn't have anything. And now you come along and you say, well, look, this is my plant, you're working for me. Well, this is not a good feeling. But for example, when I came here and met with our designers from our designing department, our creative department, I told them, look, I expect so many hours a week from you. Now, if you do them all in one row and stay home the rest of the week, that's all right with me, because I can't tell you to be creative from 7 in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon. That's impossible. And as you even saw, it's beyond that time today. And they started at 6:15 up in the designing department, and they're still here today.
So, given the proper motivation, you don't have any complaint about
I would say no. No.
That the work ethic maybe was not lost. Maybe it was.
It was sleeping. It was sleeping because there was no incentive. There was nothing to live for, nothing to die for here under the communist system. Now the people see that, hey, wait a minute, there is a chance to crawl up to the top. And from an owner's standpoint, I believe the opportunities here in East Germany, Dresden or Saxony primarily, East Germany, Dresden specifically, I think you can reach the stars here.
How do you think that compares here, the economic machine, with what we see developing in the Czech Republic and Poland? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of muscle here.
Well, let me put it this way. I believe that a lot of companies are going to Czechoslovakia or Poland to have their parts being produced, not to have research done, not to have development done, even though I'm sure there's something being done along that line. But basically, it's part production because labor is cheap. If someone is looking for that, yes, that's where they should go. If they're looking for brains, if they're looking for new products, new lines, new ideas, new concepts, this is the place to be.
And even in your field, the camera field, where we thought everything had gone to Japan that was quality.
Well, there'll probably be some Japanese listening in as far as that's concerned, but we've conquered the panorama market. We've taken it away from the Japanese. We're in the process right now of taking away the behind lens shutter system for large format cameras. And we have a few other things that we're coming out with in the 94-foot Akina, where we also will take them away from the Japanese market, from the Japanese competitors. So that I believe we will be ahead in several fields. And Dresden being the birthplace of photography, I want to make it the heart of photography again.
That's pretty good. What have we not touched on that would help Americans know how difficult it was to make this work, and how satisfying it was, how